Hi, folks, it's Dominic again with Light in the Dark, and this is part 3 of my multi part mini documentary. So today's part is going to be about the economy and the economic aspects of what is going on, and just the whole monetary system and what it's been about throughout its history and where it's led us into, and what it's for and what the purpose of it is. You know, a lot of people are becoming aware that this whole lockdown is destroying the global economy to an extent that, if we continue to obey and just do what we are told and comply with the lockdown and not push back and not, you know, reopen our businesses regardless of what the politicians are telling us we're allowed to do. A lot of people are aware that if we don't push back and we don't open business back up, there's really not going to be any hope of saving the economy. In fact, if we don't open everything back up, the economy is just simply going to collapse, and however they plan on whatever they plan on doing with the economy, whether they want to have a long-term collapse where we're, in this situation of scarcity and homelessness for decades and decades before they swoop in and offer their pre-planned solutions, or if they just simply flip a switch and say, okay, we're going to a universal basic income, and it's going to be a digital currency in these digital wallets that we're going to give you guys, and you're now going to use this digital currency. We're phasing out the old currencies across the world. However they want to do it, a lot of people, really what people need to be realizing is, regardless, it's not going to be good. And a lot of people are becoming aware that, there's more to this than meets the eye. There's more going on here than, certainly people are seeing that there's more going on here than what we're being told, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing that people are questioning what's happening and what's going on and what the real results are of this lockdown. But even so, a lot of people aren't seeing that this is a part of an agenda. It's not just bad management. It's not political incompetence. These politicians know exactly what they're doing. They're puppets, and they're simply doing what their masters are ordering them to do. And they're basically selling out all of humanity and setting us up for a massive reset and really a massive culling, to cover their own ass and have some, they're promised a life of luxury if they do this. They're promised all these perks and benefits, and the real big guys running the world are basically saying, if you do what we tell you, and you work in these governments and you push these laws and enslave these populations, we'll make sure that you're on the inside with us, when really they're going to be kicked to the side just like the rest of us. And some of them are seeing it, very, very few, but some of them are kind of seeing it, and you're starting to see some of the people, even in the media, starting to break ranks and push back, So I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a spew about some off-topic things regarding all of that. But back to the economy and the aspects of the monetary system. So the economy's not going to survive this. And I've been saying for a long time that the economy's already toast. I said right when this lockdown started that, if we let it continue for more than like about 2 or 3 weeks, there's going to be no saving, the old economic system. There's going to be no way of saving the old world. Not that the old world was a good thing, but, um, there's certainly going to be no way of preventing what they're trying to roll out, in terms of doing it through means of just reopening business and everything. the only real way to reverse what's coming is to push back, and just not comply with it. There's no bringing back to life the old economy. There's no bringing back to life the old monetary system and the old way of commerce and trade. It's destroyed. It's completely broken. And like I've said in the first part, they have the economy on life support, essentially. It's already dead for the most part. It's literally being held together on life support, and all the controllers have to do is simply pull the plug when they're ready to. You're going to start to see food prices skyrocket. You're going to start to see, the cost of living skyrocket. You're going to start to see the value of the dollar go way, way down. And that's a big part of what these stimulus checks are about. Like I've said before, the more you print money and the more you funnel money into the economy, and as it gets down into the public, into the market, and gets traded around, and there's more money liquidated into the economy, the value of the dollar will go down. And what it is there's the centralized banking system where every dollar we print is borrowed. It's not, the US dollar is not the American owned, currency. It's a fiat currency that's owned by foreign interests and special interests. It's not controlled and regulated and owned by the US government and the US Mint and the US Treasury. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Trump just signed this order to merge the Treasury and the Federal Reserve together, And essentially what he did was he just combined them. He didn't take control back over the US dollar and the US currency system. All it did was merge them together. It was a play. It was a puppet show for people who are aware of the centralized banking system to get them to think that, Trump's on our side and he's trying to save the economy. He's not. He's not on our side. I don't know how hard it is to break that through so many of these QAnon supporters and these Trump supporters, But anyway, the US dollar is printed from the Federal Reserve, essentially. Well, it's borrowed from the Federal Reserve and it's printed in our mints and, distributed out through the Treasury. So every time we print money, since the Federal Reserve essentially is a foreign-owned corporation, it's a foreign-owned entity, and the US dollar is owned and controlled by that Federal Reserve. Every time we print out US dollar notes, essentially what it is it's a note. It's a note saying it's an IOU to the Federal Reserve, essentially. It's borrowed money that comes at an interest as well. So not only do every time we print a dollar do we owe a dollar back to the Federal Reserve, but we also owe that dollar plus interest. That dollar and some change. So every time we print more money and we put it into the economy, the U.S. national debt goes up and the cost of living goes up and the value of the dollar goes down. And that's essentially what we're seeing with these stimulus checks, is a rapid increase in the national debt, and liquidating more money into the economy and further lowering its value. People think more money is a good thing. Look, no, it's not. Printing out more money doesn't put more money in the hands of people. It puts more paper in the hands of people. It puts more digits on a screen, but it doesn't actually increase your wealth. It further reduces your wealth because it through hyperinflation, it lowers the value of your purchasing power. It puts you more in debt without you even realizing you're in debt. And I can go on and explain how, fractal reserve banking and centralized banking works, and how the whole monetary system works. But, based on what I just described, that's kindergarten stuff. Like, that should be, simple for anyone with half, a brain to comprehend and see how, as we print more money, the value of it goes down. The Federal Reserve doesn't actually belong to the U.S. government, so every time we print more money, the national debt goes up because it's borrowing money. And it comes at interest, which even further reduces the value of the dollar, keeps us in this constant state of needing to borrow money in order to, stimulate the economy, which actually all it does is, it can help create jobs, it can help put money into circulation, but really all it does is lower the value of the dollar. So really people are just working 2 or 3 jobs, so that they can afford a basic lifestyle, instead of working that one job like we used to, right? It just gets people to work harder for less. And that's what this whole monetary system that we've had in place for so many generations was all about. It was about destabilizing the economy. It was about creating mass poverty, mass inequality of wealth, where the people who control the monetary system have all the wealth because they're the ones who run it. They're the lenders, and then the governments that borrow the money and then give it out to the people who are essentially the borrowers are the ones who get screwed, And look, I'm not talking about inequality of wealth like, Joe Schmo makes $100,000 or $200,000 a year because he worked his ass off to start his own business, and I flip burgers at McDonald's and I feel ripped off and I feel like it's unequal. No, I'm not talking about that. You work harder, you make more money, obviously. I'm talking about inequality in the sense that people who are criminals and psychopaths have created a monetary system and forced countries to use it so that they can accumulate all the real wealth while we simply work our asses off trying to keep our heads above water using their monetary system that just keeps us in this perpetuated debt slavery system. And it's an unstable system, and they knew that right from the beginning. Like I said in the first part, they knew when they created this monetary system that it wasn't built to last. They never built it to last. It was built to eventually hyperinflate and implode under its own weight. It was built to eventually become so unstable that it would just implode on itself. What they were doing was they were using it while it was in practice, while it was around. It's still around, but we're seeing it collapse right now, the monetary system. But while it was around, it was being used by them to basically steal all the real wealth and all the resources from the people and all the assets and all the land and property and everything. That's what it was about. It was about making it so that people were working longer hours and working more and more for less and less. And they were less and less capable of buying land. They were less and less capable of buying resources. They could only afford 2, of these new cars that are made out of cheap material. Everything's getting produced out of cheaper material because it's economically sensible and viable to do so. And so all it was about was basically getting people into a situation where they couldn't afford to buy things that the controllers could. They couldn't afford to buy land. They couldn't afford to buy real assets. And ultimately it was to get people chasing the dollar and to get them focused on the dollar rather than putting their money into things like gold and silver, which is the only real currency, if we're being honest, in this whole economic system. I mean, the real currency is freedom and truth and your energy and your time and your skills. But if we're talking about a monetary system, then yes, gold and silver is actually really the only real currency, the only real material currency of, precious metals. Precious metals is the only real currency if we're going to have a monetary system. Because it's the only thing that actually holds value. It's not something that can be, given a fake value. It's not something that can be hyperinflated. It never loses its value. It always keeps its value. There's like this old saying that back in the day, you could buy an ounce of gold for like, $10, and that ounce of gold would essentially get you a good suit, a good pair of shoes, a good hat, and a good briefcase. And nowadays, if you want to go buy a good suit, a good pair of shoes, a good hat, and a good briefcase, it's going to roughly cost you around $1,500. Well, guess what? The price of gold is for an ounce is roughly about $1,500. So the value of gold doesn't lose its value. The cost of gold changes in value based on the other form of currency that you're using and how much value the other currency has, which would, in our case here in the United States, is the US dollar. So it's the US dollar that has changed in value, not the gold. The gold is worth the same. The currency's value has dropped down, so now it takes more dollars to buy an ounce of gold. But an ounce of gold could still buy you what an ounce of gold could buy you 100 years ago. See what I'm saying? So that's the only currency that really actually keeps its value. And what they've done over the centuries is steal all the gold and silver from the hands of the people and get them to use this fiat currency system. You know, and even I believe it was somewhere in the 1930s, they even passed a law where it was illegal for people to hold on to their gold and silver, or at least just their gold or something, where they passed a law where there was a government buyback on everyone's gold and silver, or everyone's gold, and you had to turn in all of your gold, and if you didn't, you could actually be punished, like go to jail, right, or be fined at least. But I believe it was up to imprisonment, where if they sent police to your house because they heard from someone or whatever, they had sources that told them, oh, this person has gold buried in their backyard. During this law that was passed, where there was the whole buyback of gold, if they found out that you were holding on to gold, they would send police to your house, and essentially, if you refused to tell them where your gold was, or you refused to hand it over, they could, physically drag you off into the prison system, throw you into jail. You would face time in prison for refusing to, comply with the whole buyback of gold at some point in the 30s when this law was passed. So there's been an everlasting agenda to, take all the gold away from the hands of the people. And simultaneously, while they were, back in the 30s trying to take the gold away from the people, back in 1913, I believe it was, or somewhere in that time frame, 1914, 1915, 16, or 17, I can't remember. I believe it was 1913 was the year that the Federal Reserve Act was passed, where they implemented the Federal Reserve and the fiat, centralized banking currency known as the US dollar note. And, well, the Federal Reserve note, actually. And, you can just see what they've been doing with the whole monetary system, how they've been enslaving us into this debt currency rather than allowing the people to use whatever currency they wanted to use. If we had a truly free market, you would think we'd have complete control over our monetary system, right? And getting to decide what type of monetary system we wanted to use for trade, right? So the monetary system that they put in place, certainly once it was the Federal Reserve Act and the centralized banking system took over pretty much the entire West, and we were all using pretty much the same centralized banking system, it was put in place and it was designed to eventually collapse and implode over itself, and they knew this, and this was the agenda, was to collapse all the economies in the Western governments, in the Western nations, because if they can collapse the economy, they can, put people in this state of scarcity, put people in this state of desperation, in this lack of having, and essentially be able to implement whatever type of system on the other side of an economic collapse that they want to implement. and it gives them the perfect excuse with an economic collapse to roll out their universal basic income, the digital currency, where you have a digital wallet and it'll likely be implemented in your phones, you know, and they can track and survey everything you buy, everything you sell. You will have to have permission to sell. It'll have to be through an approved, government approved business that you paid taxes and fees and went through regulations to open up. You won't be able to just simply buy something and decide later on that you don't really want it and sell it to your friend or your neighbor, where they can just hand you cash and buy it from you with cash. Nope, that'll be phased out. So from now on, you can't buy and sell. You can't trade with your neighbors. The only way people will be able to trade with each other is through bartering. They won't be able to use a currency, and even that will be controlled. People won't be able to barter, because it's likely that every single resource, every single thing that is produced will have a chip in it, a monitoring chip. And you won't be able to even trade it, because they will know when it goes into another house. They will know when it's in the hands of someone else. And if you think this is super far-fetched that they'll put tracking chips in things like, let's see, lawnmower. You have a lawnmower and you don't want it anymore, and you give it to your neighbor, and he gives you a weed eater, right? If you don't think that they're going to put monitoring chips in these, guys, they're already doing it in video gaming consoles. They're doing it in all your electronic devices. They're already talking about putting it in other items, and, they're talking about putting monitoring microchips inside people. So if you think they're not considering doing this to random objects that you buy from stores, you're out of your mind. They're not only considering it, they're pushing the idea of it. They're heavily saying that they're going to do it. And they're trying to condition people to get used to the idea that this will be the future. So don't think that that's not coming. So what they're going to be able to do when they collapse this economy is implement their smart currency, their digital currency, through the digital wallets and the universal basic income, where you only get money based on your social credit points. You'll still have to work a slave job. You'll still have to, get up every day and leave your family to go to work. But instead of just getting paid based off your work and from your private employer, you'll be getting paid from the government, and it won't just be based on the work you do. In fact, that'll have very little to do with it. The only thing that will affect whether or not you get paid in terms of the work that you do is if you show up to your slave shift, your slave job every day. If you call out too many times, not only will your job be on the line, but also your social credit points will be on the line. Where even if you go get another job and you get your digital money back up, to where you can afford to buy stuff again, your social credit point score will be low and you won't be able to buy anything, right? So, and I did my second part, talking about the AI, and some of these parts are going to kind of overlap, because the AI kind of ties in with the digital currency, which ties in with the whole collapse of the economy and the economic aspects of what's going on. They're going to use social crediting to tie in with the digital currency, where you will be rewarded digital currency based on how many social credit points you have, where if you have a certain number of social credit points, you will be rewarded free digital currencies just for being a good, trustworthy citizen, and if you lose enough social credit points, it can also affect your bank account, your digital currencies, and it'll all tie in, and even if it doesn't affect the number of digital currencies you have, it will still affect what you can and cannot buy, because your purchasing power won't just simply be based on how much money you have. It'll be based on your social credit score, and if you're trustworthy enough to have access to grocery stores and public services and things like that. If you're trustworthy enough to go buy stuff at your Home Depot, or your Walmart or whatever, So this will play a huge role in your ability to be able to accumulate resources and things like that. Your ability to rent, your ability to take out a mortgage or take out a loan and pay a mortgage on eventually buying a house, right? These things will be affected on your social credit points, which will come hand in hand with the digital currency system that they want to roll out, this universal basic income, that they want to roll out on behalf of collapsing the current economy. They have to destroy the current economy in order to implement the new economy that they want to roll out. And, like I keep saying, the monetary system served its purpose. What it was about was leading us to this point. At first we had gold and silver, then it went to fiat currency. Now we're starting to use debit cards and credit cards, and soon it'll just be a digital wallet on your smartphone where you have a digital currency that is intertwined with the social crediting, where they will kind of be one of the other. They will be one of the same in a sense. Because, like I keep saying, your social credit score will ultimately be your bank account when it really comes down to it. Because that will be the real determining factor on what you can buy and cannot buy. It won't be how many digital currencies you have in your digital wallet. It'll be, that'll definitely play a role where even if you have a good social credit score, if you have like 10 digital currencies, 10 digital coins, and it costs 20 digital coins to buy something, then yeah, in that sense, the old way will still be put into practice where, if you don't have enough money, you can't buy it. But if you do have enough money, but your social credit score is too low because you've been saying things that the government doesn't like or whatever, and you've been getting your social credit points deducted, even if you have 20 digital coins and it costs 20 digital coins, you can't buy it because your social credit score is too low. That's the new economy they're trying to bring out. That's the economic system they're trying to bring out. Now let me put our current situation into terms that people can really comprehend. The economy is about to collapse, folks. If you're keeping your money in the bank, you're stupid. Because, and here's the thing, is all over the media, they're telling you, keep your money in the bank, trust the banks. The bank's not in danger of, of having to bail itself out at the expense of you guys and freeze your assets like it did, back in 2008. Oh no, that's not going to happen. Trust it. Trust the banks. Your money's fine in the banks. If you're keeping your money in the banks, you are a moron. You do not know what is coming. You do not know where we are headed. People have very short attention spans, and I can even say this about people in my own friends groups and friend circles and my own family, where they trust the banking system. They think the banking system's fine, and their attention spans are so short that they can't even comprehend, oh, this happened back in 2008, and history does have a tendency of repeating itself when we don't learn from our past mistakes. Our past mistakes of trusting the centralized banking system, and believing that the banks will, take care of us and keep our money safe, and they would never try to, freeze our accounts to bail themselves out when there's a big collapse happening. Like the 2008 recession. What we're headed for right now is going to make the 2008 recession look like a little boy and girl's tea party. What we're headed for right now is going to make the Great Depression look like a little boy and girl's tea party. We're headed for a global economic collapse, a global supply chain collapse like we have never seen. Okay, the value of your dollar will be utterly worthless once this kickstarts, once this happens. Once the economy collapses, it'll be like an overnight process where one day, the day before, your money had value and you were able to go and turn that money into food or turn it into resources where you could go to stores and buy things. And then the next day, that money will have no value. Where it doesn't matter if you have $100,000. You have essentially what it will be is 100,000 pieces of paper. Your money will have no value in cash either. But I'm telling you right now, you're better off having your money in cash out of the banks than you are having it in the banks, because at least out of the banks they can't freeze it, right? It's physical, it's in your hand, you have it. If it's in the banks and it's digital currencies, they can freeze it at any point in time. They can close your account. You know what I'm saying? Oh, sorry, we had to bail out the bank. The economy collapsed. Nobody has access to their bank account. Sorry, just the way it is. We didn't see this coming. Bullshit. But yeah, at least have it in cash. But really, really, really put your cash into precious metals. Buy gold and silver. Buy tools. Buy survival gear. Buy seeds. Especially buy seeds. Buy fruits and vegetable seeds. Buy gardening supplies, buy soil, buy fertilizer, buy, starter plants, start growing a garden. Put your money into precious metals like gold and silver. Because realistically, gold and silver, out of all the types of currency, is the only currency that's going to hold value. The U.S. Federal Reserve note isn't going to hold value once this economy collapses. It doesn't matter if you have $20,000, $30,000 in cash tucked away in your house somewhere. You might, in the wake of a collapse, maybe you might, for the first couple of days, maybe the first couple of weeks, people will still be like, okay, yeah, you can buy this. I'll sell you this for the cash that you have, and you might be able to buy a loaf of bread with like $5,000 of cash, maybe. But, having cash, it will definitely be a better option than having your money in the banks. But really, 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 I'm telling people, buy gold and silver, buy precious metals, buy objects and things and seeds that will actually have real value. Food is the highest value, but at least buy yourself some precious metals like gold and silver. They're leading us into the collapse, and I'm telling you right now, if you don't prepare, you're not, going to really survive what's coming. I mean, sorry, but that is the case. I wish I could say differently, but, if I'm being honest, a lot of people aren't growing their own food. And if you don't at least have gold and silver to barter and trade with other people, you're going to be really screwed. I don't want to say this, but a lot of people are going to be completely caught off guard when this happens. They haven't prepared in their own lives. They've been living these consumerism-based lifestyles. They've put all their money into the tech and having and status and image and having a fancy car and nice clothes and all these things, and it has nothing to do with survival. It has nothing to do with real life. And when shit really hits the fan and people are in a situation where really the only thing that matters at that point is survival and what you have to aid you in your survival and what you know how to do to survive, the life skills that you have, the survival skill sets that you have, a lot of people are going to be without because they haven't spent their lives utilizing them for those things. And they're going to be completely screwed when it's about survival and it's no longer, about status and image and how good your job pays you and stuff like that. So, didn't go as in detail as I wanted to in this part. I might make a second part or another part. So this is part 3. I might make a fourth part also about the economy. I'm not sure yet. I might just leave it here. I wanted to go into more depth, but unfortunately I have to go to my slave job. So and I have to clock in like in the next couple minutes. So I'm going to leave it here. And I just want people to kind of think about some of the things I said and look at this from the economic aspect of where they're trying to lead us and what this whole economy system was about to begin with, and really just how fragile it is and how close we are towards its actual collapse, and where you should be investing your money into. So I'm going to leave it there. Till then, take care, folks. I hope you have a great day. Please be strong through these trying times. And remember, we are free, whether the system wants to recognize that or not. It's time for us to take that freedom back.